you, Dan and Sammy, for that special. Really appreciate it. Good morning, Crestwood.
Good morning.
Hey, as always, I'm happy to be here. I hope you're happy to be here as well. I want to bring a message today on the need for Christmas. This month marks the 14th anniversary of the worst ice storm I can remember in my lifetime. It was a Friday evening. It was December the 1st, 2006. Beth and Luke had just moved back from Colorado, and they were living with us as they were in transition in the process of relocating here in St. Louis and finding jobs. And we sat down to eat dinner that night, and it started to rain, and it was a heavy rain, and it was a freezing rain, and in just a handful of minutes, everything was coated with a thick layer of ice, and our power went out. And it would be out for an entire week. It wouldn't come on until the following Friday evening. There were people in our church whose power was out for 3 weeks during that ice storm. And every night, we would all come home and we'd sit down in a cold, dark house. No heat, no lights. You would think this would be an opportunity for an incredible family bonding time. Yeah, you're right. No, didn't happen in any way, shape, or form. And we sat there in silence in the cold dark. And if anybody ever said anything, it was a complaint. This is awful. When's the lights ever going to turn? I am cold. Beth said, I can't believe it. The week we moved back here, the power goes out. This is horrible. I can't wait to get out of here. Let me tell you, parents, if your kids ever move back in with you and you wonder, are they ever going to leave? You might call the power company up in the middle of winter and say, would you shut the power off for a week? It's an incredible motivator to get them out of the house. The problem is Sammy was ready to go too, and I was too. It was the longest week of our life. When the lights came on a week later, we partied, we celebrated. That must be how the people felt when Jesus was born. Last week, Mark did such an incredible job talking about the intertestamental period, the period between the Old and the New Testament, and the 400 to 450 years leading up to the birth of Christ. And during that time, it seemed like God was silent. There were no miracles, no miraculous signs or wonders or dramatic revelations from God. It just seemed like they were wandering in the dark, perhaps like a lot of people in 2020. Their lives have been turned upside down in our world in this past year, and they find the lights have gone out, man. COVID-19 has just changed everything. It's changed the way we work, where we work, if we even work. It's changed schools, it's changed hospitals, it's changed churches, it's changed businesses, it's changed parties and celebrations, funerals, weddings, anniversary celebration. It just has changed everything. And it looks like the lights have gone out. We need Christmas more than ever. Now, some of you may say, preacher, Christmas is over. Yeah, it occurred a couple days ago. It's history. That's the problem. Because the Christmas that God wants to bring to us is a 365 Christmas. And if it's not that, then it's not even Christmas one day out of the year. Here's the message of Christmas that we so desperately need. Matthew 4:16 talks about that first Christmas. And here's what it says. Matthew 4:16. The people living in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. Real quickly this morning, just want to talk about two simple lessons that we've got to grasp if we're going to get the true meaning of Christmas. First off, here we go today. Our need is a lot greater than we think. Our need is a lot greater than we think. Let's go back to the garden. Remember when God came to Adam and Eve and he said, you got total freedom, but just don't eat of that tree. I tell you not to. The day you eat of it, you're going to die. Well, we know the rest of the story. They ate of it. They must have thought and rationalized, and it can't be that big of a deal. But it was a lot bigger than they could ever imagine. Death is always separation. And there was a psychological separation when they sinned and disobeyed God. Their eyes were opened. And they realized they were naked and they were embarrassed. They were ashamed. They tried to get fig leaves to cover themselves. And the seeds of low self-esteem and low self-worth and shame and guilt were sown there in the garden. There was also a spiritual separation. God came walking in the garden, and now they're hiding from him. They never hid from him before, but sin separated them from God. And that's the message throughout the whole Old Testament. And Christmas is the message that God has come to reconnect with us. There's also a sociological separation that occurs there in the garden. Adam, God says, have you eaten of that tree I told you not to? What did he do? He took it like a man. He took responsibility, didn't he? He played the old brain game. Not me. It's that lousy wife you gave me. It's Eve. She did it. It's her fault. Now, I'm sure that went over real well with Eve, and I'm sure he heard about it that night, don't you? But the seeds of marital strife and discord and division were sown there in the garden. There was an environmental separation. God says you want to struggle just to survive. You want to put food on the table, you're going to have to work at it, and it is not going to come easy. And as a farmer, believe you me, you battle weeds and thistles and thorns and stickers and cockleburrs and Johnson grass and giant ragweed and pestilences and bugs and insects, floods, droughts, hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis, name it. The whole universe just seems to be shaken and falling apart because of that separation. But there was also the physical separation. Some 900 years later, Adam and Eve died, and their soul and spirit would be separated from their body. Their physical body would return to the dust of the ground from which it came. And every time we drive by a funeral home, every time we drive into the cemetery, we are reminded as to how big our need really is. Ephesians 2 says, we were dead in trespasses and sins. That's a big deal. But the good news of Christmas is our gift. The gift of Christmas is in Jesus, is so far greater than we can ever imagine. The gift of Jesus is so much greater than we can ever imagine. Isaiah chapter 9, verses 6 and 7 is a prophecy of who Jesus would be. And it says, for to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor. Boy, do we need that. I'm sick and tired turning on the TV. Every time I do, it seems like all I hear are a bunch of false prophets saying one thing one day and another thing the next day. Jesus says he's absolute truth. What he said was true then. It's true today, and it'll be true to the end of time. He's a wonderful counselor. We can build our lives with confidence upon his word. Wonderful counselor. He's also a mighty God. Boy, do we need that. Every day it seems like I become more aware to my limitations. And Jesus is the one who created everything we see. And he was mighty God in the flesh. I have any trouble with that. You know what I have trouble with? I have trouble with the next one. How can a mighty God care about me here on planet Earth and be an everlasting Father? Mark did such a great job a few weeks ago. Mark, when you put up those slides, you know, of the universe and of the galaxies, you know, and you said, here we are. I had to get my glasses on. On that big screen, planet Earth was like if you took a needle and just put on the rest, and you go, look at all these galaxies and all these planets and stars. That's planet Earth. We came and see it. And on planet Earth, I have all the billions of people. Can he care about me? Oh yeah, that's the message of Christmas that we need. He's crazy in love with you and I. He's not just a mighty God. He wants to be our everlasting Father. I need that. It was 20 years ago, my dad died. And I can honestly tell you, I miss him more today. I think of him more every day today than ever before in my life. But I'm thankful every day I have a mighty God who wants to be my everlasting Father.
Amen.
And provide for me everything I might ever need and then some. To think because of Jesus, I'm a part of his family. I'm his child. We are his sons and daughters through Jesus. He's a wonderful, everlasting Father. And because of that, he's our Prince of Peace. Prince of Peace. It doesn't matter what 2021 brings. It doesn't matter if the whole world blows up and falls apart. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when you go home tonight. If you're a Christian, if you follow Jesus. When you go to bed, if you wake up in the morning here on planet Earth, or whether you wake up in the presence of God in heaven, it really doesn't matter because the war with God is over. It's over, man. Jesus made peace for us with God once again through his death on the cross. Man, our gift. It's so much greater than we could ever begin to imagine. Now, for the rest of our time, I want to talk about a defining moment in my life. I've had a handful of them, and looking back, it seems like every defining moment for me came out of a crisis. And at the time when I look back, it seemed like every crisis was a time when the lights just went out. Like I was left in the darkness. But only now, when I can look back on those times when I went through those valleys, those dark valleys. It's never true. The lights never went out. In fact, looking back, I can see God's light shined in ways it was never possible for it to shine in my life before. One of those defining moments occurred 14 years ago. I was 52 at the time. I was great health and strength. I had never been sick hardly a day in my life, seriously. I had never been to the hospital as a patient. Life was good. I just didn't have any pains most days I woke up. Life was good. But that day, that afternoon, I went through McDonald's and ate a sandwich. And I had an incredible pain down low like I had never experienced in my life. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And I drove home. I didn't go back to the office. Drove home, took some ibuprofen, and laid down on the bed for about an hour. Got up, felt a little better, not great, and I thought, I'll just walk it off. That was nothing unusual back then because at that point in my life, I was walking anywhere from 3 to 6 miles every day. And I didn't walk the roads, I didn't walk sidewalks, I didn't walk where there were houses or people. I walked cross country. I went out backwards, down through the creek bottoms of the hills. The rougher the terrain, the better. And so I took my 3 dogs and we took off. And we gone a couple miles making this long circuit up through the bottoms and coming along the bluffs. And it hit me again. I knew I was in serious trouble. Oh man, there's nobody around out here. And we didn't have cell phones back then. And I thought, man, this is not good, you know. And I don't remember that trip back to the house. Obviously, God got me there. And the time I did, Sammy said I so doubled over in pain, my head was almost touching the floor. She'd just gotten home from work, and she immediately got me in the car, took me to emergency. And make a long story short, my colon had ruptured. And I was in the hospital for a while. They thought they'd have to operate. They said, you know, maybe I'll heal over, and it's a long story. And so I got out of the hospital. But it ruptured again several weeks later. And the doctor said, man, Steve, we got to get you in the hospital. This is really critical. He said, you got to be in a week before we can operate to get you ready to operate. And then you'll be in a week after surgery. 2 weeks for me off the farm in a hospital. And I was in such pain, so miserable. And I knew I'd have nothing to eat during those 2 weeks. It'd be a liquid diet. And I prayed, God, just give me a private room. I don't feel like talking to anybody. I don't want to be around anybody. I never felt worse. I just want to be left alone. Got to the hospital. There were no private rooms available. And so they put me in this room. Thankfully, there was nobody in the other bed. And it stayed that way for about 7 hours. And in the middle of the night, they brought this guy in. And I didn't know what was going on, but I knew he's in a serious situation. They pulled the curtain, you know, the lights were on, and they're talking, and he's hollering, and it just sounded like a fight going on all night long. I discovered you get no rest when you're in the hospital. You know what I mean? None. You know. And next morning, he told me his name was Jim McGill, also known as Jim the photographer. He told me what had happened. He said, Stephen, that's what he called me. Don't ask me why. I have no idea. Nobody's ever called me Stephen like he does. And no one's ever called me that since. And don't start today. But he said, Stephen, he said, I work for a hard rock radio station here in Springfield. And he said, last night we had a rock concert out at the fairgrounds. And he said, at the end of the concert, we close as we always do with this big fireworks display. He said, Stephen, here's what I do. He says, I get on stage, and there's no other way for me to make this any better than it actually is. He says, I get on stage, and he says, I take my pants and shorts down, and I squat down. And a guy behind me comes with his bottle rocket holder, and he uses my cheeks and back to hold the holder in place. They put the bottle rockets in it, they light it, it goes up in the air, and kaboom! He says, oh, it's quite a sight. I said, Jim, I can't even imagine. Don't want to imagine. Already I've got far more information than I really need here. And he went on. He said, Stephen, done this hundreds of times. People love it. But he said last night, the guy lighting the bottle rockets was so stoned from drugs or alcohol or both, he put one in upside down and he lit it and kablooey, it blew my rear end in pieces. Oh, Jim. I said, unbelievable. Oh, yeah. Jim was quite a character. The next morning, after the shift changed, this young, attractive nurse comes in, and she stops, and she walks in the room. She looks at both of us, and she goes, is this some kind of a sick joke? She said, are you guys twins? Here's a picture of Jim McGill. We're going to put a picture of my buddy Jim. Yeah, we're both bald. We're about the same age. And people have said we even look alike. And so she looks at him, looks at me, and she goes, are you guys twins? I spoke up. I said, honey, We are not related in any way, shape, or form. We couldn't be any more different, you know. And she said, Steve Ravitsky. I said, that's me. She says, I'll be your nurse today. So she comes over to my bed. Jim leans over and he goes, Stephen, she looks like a hottie to me. Now, I would soon discover that Jim had a very limited vocabulary. And hottie happened to be one of the big words in his small vocabulary. He used it freely and frequently, I would find out, every day. If I had visitors coming, if they were female, didn't matter if they were younger, older, even married or not, they were a hottie, you know. And he had no qualms to say that. And he says, man, looks like a hottie to me. Well, she glared at him, looked at me. I don't know this guy. Yeah, no, sorry. And she left. Jim goes, Stephen? He goes, maybe I'll get a hottie for a nurse today, too. Maybe, Jim. Maybe. A few minutes later, I'm not making this up. Sammy, I'll tell you the absolute truth. This gal walked in, and she was the exact opposite of my nurse. She was a lot older. She was extremely overweight. She had not been blessed with good looks. It looked like life had been hard for her. It looked like she might have had a prior career in the Women's Wrestling Federation, you know, and it looked like she was ready to beat on somebody. And when she spoke, she had the deepest, raspiest voice I ever heard from a woman. I swore she could have been a drill sergeant in the Marine Corps. And she goes, Jim McGill. That's your guy right there, you know. And I grabbed my covers to pull them over my head because I was fighting to keep them loosening. And Jim, she looks like a hottie to me. And I pulled the covers over, God is my witness, buried my head in my pillow and just lost. I never laughed so hard in my life. It's the only time I ever laughed in the hospital. And I said, God, you do have a sense of humor, and you are a God of justice. God, I prayed for a private room. I didn't get one. You gave me the most messed up guy in the world for a roommate. He's part of a world I can't comprehend even existed. And I'm part of a world he can't comprehend exists either. But now we're getting somewhere, you know, now we're getting somewhere. There is justice. And it seemed like every day I got the young, pretty attractive nurses, and he got the Marine drill sergeants. You know what I mean? Seriously. And every day was another episode. I mean, it was a train wreck having this guy as a roommate. If you weren't sick before, you would be later. My company came during the day. That's when they're supposed to come, right? He had no company during the day. His came at night, late at night. And they started about 10, 11 o'clock at night, seriously. And they came one at a time. And after they'd leave, after 20, 30 minutes, another would come 5, 10 minutes later. And they'd go all night to 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't know how you get in Memorial Hospital past the guard. But these were young, attractive gals. And they were dressed in ways I'd never seen any gal dress. And I don't know what establishments they worked at in Springfield, but obviously I had not been there shopping. And these young gals were hotties in Jim's world, believe you me. And they would come in one at a time, and they would just love on him. Oh, sweetie pie, what is going on? And he's lapping it up, and he's telling them graphic detail how bad. I listen to this all night long. He thinks I'm asleep. He can't sleep. And then at the end, without exception, he told him this. He said, but as bad as I am, I'm not near as bad as that old guy in the bed next to me. I don't think he's probably going to make it. And I'm laying there, and I said, oh, this is horrible. You know why it was horrible? because I was feeling the same way, I ain't going to make it, And if I ever had a chance, Jim has just taken away any opportunity for me to get better. Every day it's another train wreck story. I could take rest of today, tell you stories you wouldn't believe that Jim did every day. Finally, I had surgery. Finally, 5-6 days later, I got out. Memorial Hospital in Springfield. I got back to the farm. Good riddance of Memorial Hospital. Good riddance of operations. Good riddance of this messed up guy named Jim. It was several weeks later before I could get back to church. And then months after that, we began to plan at Litchfield for the biggest Sunday in the history of our church. We planned a Bring a Friend Sunday. Bring a friend Sunday. And we made it evangelistic. Don't invite anybody who's already happy and going to another church and member of another church. Invite people that don't have a church family or church home, or at least not going to church, and have them come. People took it seriously. They were talking to me every week, more and more people say, hey, we're bringing so-and-so. We knew we were going to be busting seams and be standing room only. Even in staff meeting, they're telling me everybody they're going to bring. I come home one night and I tell Sammy, I said, this is horrible. I said, everybody's bringing somebody for Bring a Friend Sunday. She goes, this is wonderful. I said, but it's horrible. I said, I'm the preaching minister, the lead minister, senior minister. I ain't got anybody to bring. All my friends are in the church. I don't have any friends outside the church. She goes, well, maybe you could invite Jim. God is my witness, and I wasn't being cute. I said, Jim who? She says, Jim, your roommate, when you were in the hospital. Jim, the photographer, Jim McGill. I go, oh, no, I'm not inviting that messed up. No. She said, well, I don't think maybe he has a church home. So I guarantee you he doesn't have any church home, And I said, well, I'm not inviting him. She said, well, I just thought it'd be nice. I discovered when your wife makes a suggestion, you're wise if you act on it, And so I told her, I said, all right, I'll invite him. I don't even know how to get a hold of this dude. But if I can get a hold of him, I'll invite him. I know he isn't going to come, but I'll try just to make you happy. So I was sharing this with Brett, chairman of our elders, good friend of mine, and he said, Steve, in my business, I have to get a hold of a lot of people who don't pay their bills and that. I have a program where I can track them down. I can get the phone numbers, even if it's unlisted. And I said, really? He goes, oh yeah. He says, I'll get this guy's phone number for you. I said, you're just too much help, Brent. But he did. He got his phone number, and I called it. And Jim answered. And I said, hey, Jim, this is Steve. I was your roommate in the hospital. Remember after that accident when your ear got blew up from those fireworks, and I had colon surgery, and he goes, oh, yeah, Steven. He couldn't sound more unexcited, And I said, hey, I'm going to be in Springfield in a couple of days. I want to take you to lunch and just connect for old time. I'll buy you lunch at Olive Garden, and we'll just get together for the good old times we had in the hospital. Boy, was that a lie. And anyway, I don't know, he said, and I knew he wouldn't. And I said, well, if you're working and can't come, that's, well, no, I'll come. I said, okay. We set time today, and Sam said, you think he'll show up? I go, not a chance. Not a chance. I pull in Olive Garden a couple days later, the time we're supposed to meet. There's Jim. He's already waiting on me. We go in and we eat, we have a great meal. And we begin to talk. And I mean, tell you, we had the first sensible conversation we'd ever had. We never had one in the hospital for some reason. But he was very honest and open. And he said, Steven, he said, my boss fired me while I was still in the hospital. The insurance company refused to pay for my medical bills. He said, I'm drowning in debt. I've lost everything. I have no friends. I said, oh man. I said, Jim, I feel horrible. I said, but Jim, we're having Bring a Friend Sunday at church. And I said, I really want you to come and be my friend. He said, oh, I don't know, Stephen. I said, we'll pay for your gas. Give you gas money. I said, I'd be glad to do it. My wife and I would take you out to a steakhouse there in Litchfield for lunch afterwards. I said, I'll do whatever it takes because I really want you there as my friend. I don't know. So we kept talking. We just talked some more. I think we were there a couple of hours about stuff. Finally, he says, I'll be there. I said, really? He goes, yeah, great. And then I thought, all my life, people said, see you at church Sunday, preacher. More times than not, they're just lying. Maybe they mean it, but they never show up. And I told Sammy, I said, I don't know if he'll show up or not. Well, Bring a Friend Sunday came, and it was a big day. I mean, we were already packed out, and they were putting up chairs, and the parking lot was full. They were putting them out on the grass, and they were parked along the sides of the driveway, coming in and going out to the church. And people said, oh, man, this is great. And the guy came up to me and said, hey, Steve. I said, yeah. He said, you won't believe this, but an old retired ambulance van just pulled in. This thing's ancient. And it's painted up, man. He says, do you remember the hippie generation and those love bugs and those love vans that had the peace symbols and the rainbows and the free love signs? I said, yeah. He says, that's kind of how it's painted up. He says, looks like maybe it should be in a circus or something, but never seen anything quite like it. And he said, you won't believe this, but a guy got out of the van and he's short and bald. He looks a lot like you. Yeah, that's my buddy Jim. Oh, good. You know, Jim came in. I gave him the biggest hug. I was never so happy to see anybody in my life. I said, you're going to sit with us. Where does the preacher sit? Front row. I mean, not second row, because every seat's full. He sat in the front row, right in the middle of Sammy and I. And I prayed, I said, God, help this guy behave himself and not get up and try to pull off some stunts on stage. You know, we just don't want to do this. And Jim behaved himself. I was glad for that. Talked very gracious. Afterwards, we took him out for lunch. And Sammy, I'll tell you, had a great visit with this guy. Very interesting guy, honestly. And once you get to know him, he just really opens up. He's a totally different guy than I had in the hospital. And so we get ready to leave, go out in the parking lot. He gets in that ambulance and all painted up. And he starts it up, and it sounds like it's not going to make it out of the parking lot, let alone make it back to Springfield. And as he's pulling out, he turns on all the lights, bells, sirens, and whistles that an ambulance. I didn't think any of them would work on this old van. That's probably the only thing that did work. Every one of them worked. I mean, it was lights, bells, whistles, sounds, and he turned them all on full blast. And he's pulling out of the parking. I can still see him. He has his window down. He leans out. He's still with one hand. He goes, bye, Stephen. And I go, bye, Jim. Everybody's looking, you know. That's my buddy Jim, you know, yeah. And he just got called out to go pick somebody up, obviously, you know. And, you know, unbelievable. The months went by. And I got busy, you know, got back to life. And one day I had to go to Springfield, but before I did, I said, you know, I wonder what's happened to old Jim. I'll reconnect with him. And I called him up, answered again, and I said, hey, Jim, Steve, I'm going to be in town. Can I take you to lunch at Olive Garden? He said, man, that'd be great. He sounded even excited this time. So I hung up, and I talked to the elders before I went. They knew this guy. I'd shared with them the story, and they had a real heart for this Jim. And I said, man, life is just falling apart with this guy. I said, I'd really like to help him out. And the elders were unanimous. I was never so proud of him in my life. We decided to write him a check, the largest check we could ever write to any individual. And they said, you give it to him. You tell him how much we really love him and care about him. I said, I'll do that gladly. So I took it and met him for lunch. And we get talking. And he's sharing, he said, man, I'm just having a problem after next. He said, you know that accident? He says, I'm having physical problems still today, Steve. He said, I'm still not well. He said, I'm all messed up. And I said, man, Jim, I said, breaks my heart. I said, here's a little something. I took the check out of my pocket. And I said, it is much. It ain't going to solve all your problems, but it's from people who really love and care about you. And I gave it to him. He opened it up. He was taken back, and he just sat there for a moment. He got all choked up. He looked at me and goes, Stephen, you want to hear something funny? I said, what's that, Jim? He said, years ago when I was starting out, I had dreams of being a preacher just like you. So much for those dreams, huh? I said, oh, Jim, man. I said, it doesn't matter whether you're a preacher or not. I said, there's a God in heaven that loves you. The church of Litchfield loves you. I said, I'd really like to get you plugged in at Litchfield, but obviously we're an hour away. You can't, I know that. I said, but I mentioned West Side there in Springfield, just less than a half mile from where we were eating. And I said, my good buddy Eddie Lowen's the lead minister there, and I said, they run thousands of people. They have so many support groups. Man, get plugged in, man. You need to, Jim. Do it for yourself. I think you'll never regret it, man. I said, they'll help you with your walk with God, you know. We talked some more, and we left. And I don't know how many months went by. And one day, one weekend, it was Saturday, Mark and the family was up, and Mark asked me, I don't know if you remember Mark saying, hey, have you heard from your buddy Jim lately? And I go, no, I need to get with him. I said, I haven't been in touch with him for some time, but I need touch base because, boy, he's having a struggle, and I really need to do more. And I'm going to try to get a hold of him. Well, I think it was the following week or two that Mark called me during the week. And maybe you remember this, Mark. You said you'd been on the computer and you'd done some research. And you said, Dad, I was doing some research about your buddy Jim McGill, Jim the photographer. And Dad, I'm going to tell you, but I read your buddy's obituary online. Man, I took it so hard. He said, Dad, he died alone in his apartment. They found him the next day. Doesn't say what he died of. And I preached this sermon today in his memory and his honor. Because since that day, I have had nightmares more times than I could count through the years. And in these nightmares, I find myself standing before God. And God says, I want you to meet somebody. And he calls somebody alongside him. He has his arm around him. He says, you remember this guy? I said, yeah, that's my buddy, Jim. He's a preacher, let me tell you. It wasn't any accident your colon ruptured. It wasn't any accident that he blew his rear end apart on stage that night at that rock concert. It wasn't any accident you didn't get your private room. And it wasn't any accident I put you two together, because I believe you could open up the floodlights of the Lord Jesus Christ and let his light and love shine on him. Man, I tell you, I wake up every time in a cold sweat, because I just don't think I've done near enough. I don't know. I hope he's with God. I hope I get to heaven. He's the first one there to hug me and say, hey, I followed up. I don't know. But the people of Litchfield would tell you from that moment on, it changed this preacher's defining moment. I'm not saying, they told me week after week, they said, you're not the same preacher. Your preaching has been ratcheted up more notches than we can tell you, preacher. I said, because of the fact I don't want any more Jim McGill slip through my fingers. Let me tell you, who's the Jim McGill in your life? If you claim to follow Jesus, and if you claim to be a Christian, you're only here for one reason, and that's for the Jim McGills of this world. Otherwise, let's just go to heaven and party. But there's too many of them still out there in the darkness. And I'll tell you what the future of this church will be. You tell me how you respond to the Jim McGills in your life. It may not be Jim. It may be a Jenny or a Jane or a Bob. I don't know. In my life, I got a feeling there's going to be a whole lot of them. And we've got to commit ourselves to opening up the floodlights of the Lord Jesus Christ to people who are stumbling in darkness and saying, is there a God out there? And if so, could he possibly care about me? Oh yeah, there is. We're going to close with a video clip. It's kind of humorous. It's about put on by the Skit Guys. And I love this video clip. And it's kind of humorous. But it brings home an important lesson, and then we'll get ready to stand and sing our invitation song.
All right, that takes care of the back of the house. You wanna go around and take the lights off the front?
Yeah, that'd be great. Oh, hey, by the way, thank you. If it wasn't for you, I don't know who'd get on that roof. You were awesome.
Yeah. Is that the house you were talking about?
Oh, yeah.
They leave their lights up all year round.
They leave their lights on all year long. Check it out.
So they leave their lights on all year long?
All year long. And those bulbs change according to whatever holiday season it is.
Yeah.
Can't, wish I could. So like
July 4th?
those bulbs come red, white, and blue.
Thanksgiving.
Harvest colors.
Halloween.
Black and orange.
Memorial Day.
Camouflage.
Yeah.
Can't, wish I could. Oh,
I bet it's embarrassing for the neighbors.
Oh, the neighborhood. We're totally embarrassed. We complain about it all the time. Oh, and when there is no holiday season going on, those bulbs become little red hot chili pepper lights.
What?
Yep.
Give me one good reason why you should celebrate the pepper.
Can't, wish I could.
It's like your neighbors at Motel 6.
My wife, she's always saying, let's just leave the lights on just a little bit longer, let you stay in the spirit of things. But when Christmas is over, you take down the lights, am I right?
I don't know. I'm not even the right guy to ask. I don't even put lights on my house.
Why don't you put lights on your house?
I'm afraid of heights. But the question is, why do you put lights on your house?
To celebrate Christmas, the birth of Christ, all that kind of stuff.
There you go. That's your answer.
What?
If you don't want to celebrate Christ all year long, then take the lights down.
That's not what I was saying. You're putting words in my mouth. You're siding with my wife.
Hey, I'm not siding with anyone. And I'm sorry. I didn't realize that you and God were,
On the outs?
Yeah.
We're not on the outs. Me and God, we're very tight. We're very, very tight.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Prove it.
Prove what? Are you daring me to leave my lights on all year long?
Hey, no dare here. I'm just saying, you gonna let your little light shine?
Wait! Man the ladder, my friend.
What?
Man that ladder. We're gonna get back up there and hang these lights.
No, I was just kidding.
Oh, yes. It is gonna be a proclamation of my faith.
Didn't you hear? I'm afraid of heights.
You're already up there. Honey! Get the apple cider ready! Put on the Barry Como records! These lights are gonna shine! Get back here! These lights have to shine!
Man, these lights, they've got to shine. That's the bottom line. Bottom line, they've got to shine. And I'm going to challenge you to say, God, open my eyes every day to the Jim McGills that you're bringing into my life. People that I might think are really weird and way out there. And I may not even like on the surface. Help me turn on the floodlights of Jesus. And let his light and love shine through. Every day, whether I'm going through the drive-thru at McDonald's, my kids will tell you, I'll connect up with that gal at the window if only I have 20 seconds or more. And I just don't know who these people are, but I don't want to miss an opportunity to say, God, I want to turn on those floodlights for you and let it shine. Will you do that as we stand and sing our invitation hymn?
Lord, lay some